Studios in Southern California. It's time for your Morning Buzz. We bring you late-breaking news that keeps you up to date with what's happening in the cannabis industry.
Hey there, happy Friday. Good morning. Today is Friday, April 15th, and these are your top cannabis news headlines. So, Schumer's marijuana Schumer's marijuana legalization bill not coming this month. Not a big surprise, but the senators work to finalize provisions. Right before that, there was a bill filed by a bipartisan bill filed, and the U.S. Attorney General would be required to create marijuana commission to advise on legalization under new bipartisan bill. And then the feds agreed to return 1 million. Feds agreed to return 1 million in marijuana cash seized from an armored car transport. Holy moly, am I having a tough Friday here. Hope everybody's doing well. We're going to break right into these headlines and go from there. So, first one up is that Schumer's marijuana legalization bill is not coming this month as senators work to finalize provisions. The long anticipated Senate bill to federally legalize marijuana will not be introduced this month, with Democratic leadership saying on Thursday that the timeline is being extended as they continue to work out various provisions with the assistance of nearly a dozen Senate committee and input from numerous federal agencies. Let's see, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, which is basically the act which is going to be brought up to the Senate in regards to more and that type of thing, is basically what's needed to pass the Senate. The timeline that Schumer previewed has apparently proved too ambitious. But the hope is that by taking extra time to finalize the measure, it will help senators overcome what are currently significant odds stacked against them to reach a high vote threshold in the chamber, where Democrats hold just a slim majority. CAOA is critical legislation that will finally put an end to federal prohibition on cannabis and address the criminalization of cannabis in a comprehensive and meaningful way, Schumer said in a press release. I am proud of the progress made in bringing this vital bill closer to an official introduction before the August reset. And I want to thank the committee chairs who have worked with us and remained committed to addressing the issue. We'll talk about that in the comments, but I'm thinking that the postponing has a little bit more to do with what the next headline is, and we're going to go ahead and get directly into that, where the U.S. Attorney General would be required to create a marijuana commission to advise on legalization under a new bipartisan bill. A bipartisan group of congressional lawmakers filed a bill on Thursday that would direct the Attorney General to create a commission charged with making recommendations on a regulatory system for marijuana that models what currently is in place for alcohol. Representative Dave Joyce, a Republican out of Ohio, and Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat out of New York, and Brian Mast, a Republican out of Florida, are teaming up on what's titled the Preparing Regulators Effectively for a Post-Prohibition Adult Use Regulated Environment Act. It's being called the Prepare Act. So this is newly filed and an incremental reform meant to inform comprehensive cannabis policy change in the future. And the measure will provide lawmakers across the ideological spectrum the opportunity to engage on cannabis reform by creating fair, honest, and publicly transparent process for the federal government to establish an effective regulation to be enacted upon the termination of its 85-year-old prohibition of cannabis, according to the summary of the sponsors. They go on to say, with the 91% of Americans supporting either medical or recreational cannabis legalization, it's time for the federal government to respect the will of the voters, both Democrat and Republicans alike, and begin a serious conversation about what post-prohibition America should look like, Joyce said in a press release. And that is, that's some movement right there. Really, with things stalling out, the initiative to get things moving comes through other people pushing the issue, and that's what this seems this is. And on to the third and final headline here before we open up to questions and comments. is something that is actually a little bit enlightening. We've been talking about banking, and we've been talking about cash and seizures and robberies and that kind of stuff recently. But the third and final headline for today is Feds agreed to return 1 million in marijuana dispensary cash seized from armored car transports. Um, Let's see with this. The U.S. Department of Justice agreed Wednesday to return all cash seized from an armored car company used by legal marijuana dispensaries during several traffic stops in California last year. The California seizures occurred based on what authorities learned in Kansas during a May traffic stop of an Imperial logistics car. Uh, or Imperial maybe, but it's spelled Empyrel, and it's a logistics car. Conversations between the state and federal law enforcement agencies stemming from this stop resulted in a series of events in which Kansas and California officers seized more than 1.2 million. Soon after, the company filed a federal lawsuit detailing how a sheriff's deputy in Dickinson County stopped one of their vehicles transporting cash from licensed marijuana dispensaries to banks and credit unions, seizing more than 165,000 in cash on Interstate 70. In response, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Kansas filed for a civil forfeiture action against Imperial, asserting that the cash was connected to sales in violation of the Controlled Substances Act. Well, um, wow. So the feds are actually returning that. And we go down to Imperial was operating legally under California law, but with the current federal civil forfeiture laws, even compliant businesses can be targeted, said Institute of Justice Senior Attorney Dan Alvin of the now settled federal case. Returning this money is the right thing to do. Holy moly, the feds are doing the right thing. What in the world is going on over here? So I'm breaking in the chat, and yeah, hello everybody. Happy Friday. Those are the headlines, and yeah, it's a good Friday. We've got we've got the weekly roll up coming up this afternoon. Well, noon time here, Pacific Standard Time, 3 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll have Jason Kitamura on with us again, and we'll be going over the list of the 75 nay votes of the people who voted against the scientific research bills that passed even without their votes, and what you can do to talk to these 75 people in your state. We'll be talking about their names, which state they're in. I don't know if we'll have the contact information. I think that might be a little bit more readily available to everybody in their own states. But within that, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing with the weekly roll up today, around noon. Yeah, the thing was this last week it was kind of slow in the headlines. There's a lot of movement, a lot of I would say repositioning on certain things, but on an overall on a state level, New Jersey, they were one of the states to make the biggest move and ultimately announce that they were going to be doing sales the day after 420, which funny enough, a day late, dollar short comes to mind. Having it open for 420 might have gotten a few more people there, but that's only numbers and statistics and that kind of thing speaking. But hey, on the other side of it, they're getting recreational sales going, and they've actually said that off-duty police officers are going to be allowed to participate without repercussion, which I thought was a pretty cool addition to the announcement of recreational sales happening starting 421. And the Attorney General says police can use while off duty, and that right there is going to present situations of which they're going to again have to figure that out, because when a police officer is on duty, they're bound to not be under the influence, right? They're not supposed, and bound, I don't mean bound as in they're eventually not going to be under the influence. I mean they're bound by their oath, they're bound by their duties to not be under the influence as they're serving the public. And with that, um, obviously there's going to be testing that needs to be going on and that kind of thing, and again proving uh, how inebriated as someone, or if they're under their influence, versus just having cannabis in their system, is something that's going to be, well, something that is going to be worked on for the next few 4, 5, 6 years until they get something scientific proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to test people like this. So yeah, good on New Jersey. Under legalization, let's see, Mountain Sky S. Under legalization, will there be more rules, more conditions, and more arrests? Definitely more rules, 100% more conditions. And when it boils down to it, this is kind of what we were just talking about in the way of inebriation and public safety. There are going to be more arrests, but it'll be for different purposes, as opposed to now people are getting arrested for mere possession. It's not about partaking. It's not about being caught with. It's caught while doing it. It's literally about being caught in possession, selling it, utilizing it for medical purposes, any purposes is what you get in trouble for now. Most of the regulations and the rules are going to be directed towards public safety after that point. So when it boils down to it, there's probably going to be more the equivalent of wet and reckless is, or open containers. If someone gets caught smoking in a car, public consumption. They're going to try to protect people just like they do with cigarettes, so that people don't have to smell it. And then DUIs. More than likely, we're gonna see some DUIs there, and that will come on the advent of ultimately them having some sort of way to test basically inebriation at that moment versus just having cannabis in your system. So yeah, here we grow wicked. As long as they have some kind of home grow, it will be awesome, and that's 100%. When it comes down to it, again, the home grow, just like whether you're talking about home brewing or anything else, it should be the right of the people, right? Within reason, obviously. The whole point to legalization and the regulation thereof is so that, again, the powers that be on the local municipality level, on the federal level, they can begin to fill their coffers with money from said transaction. It's capitalism. It's the American way. But really, also the freedom to provide your own medicine, the freedom to grow your own recreational goods, just like brewing your own beer on a level of personal consumption, should definitely be part of every state's law, regardless of what they think they're going to lose to sales. Because I, for one, know, if you're doing a closet grow, hey, you can do great, but it's a full-time job, and if you don't have a green thumb, it's really tough to grow it. On the other hand, some of the home growers produce the best medicine for themselves and that kind of thing. So it's going to even out. But long and the short is access to people, access for people who don't have the ability to grow it, access for people who don't have other means of which to participate in growing, whether we're talking disabled, beyond, where we're talking caregivers or that kind of thing, quadriplegics or hospice care, that kind of deal. They need access to it without being able to grow it. And that's kind of the big thing there is really having it medically available for people who benefit from it on a quality of life level. So homegrown, 100%. Senate won't pass until we get the Republican dinosaurs out. We're going to go over that a little bit more in depth here at the weekly roll up and talk about the 75 people who all happen to be Republicans um, voting against scientific research for this plant. And that right there is something we'll go into a little bit more when we have Jason here, and we can talk about it and then get involved in the comments. And I don't want to misrepresent or quote wrong. I just want to get the list out in front of you guys, and then it'll be around over the weekend and that kind of thing. Let's see, Mountain Skies. They're looking for that 8,500 a pound from dispensaries with rec. Which state are you talking about in? Just out of curiosity. And Michael Payton Sr., that was in the House, not the Senate. Are you talking about the research bills that just passed the House? Because the research bills that just passed the House, despite the 75 Republicans who voted nay, yes, that was in the House. And realistically, um, you were correct. Um, did Little Mac 86? Did you see the Facebook trials? They don't understand how the internet works, let alone medicine. I'm going to have to agree with you on that, just because of where we sit as a news and media company. Obviously, we're not even comparable to the companies and giants of which we're on trial there. But as a news and information company bringing information, I was a little concerned with how things were going to settle out for those people at the top, because we all have to deal with that as a platform. So, yep, 100% saw how that worked out or didn't work out, and how they were learning along the way with that trial and their expose there. Mass Patriot. I'm looking to move to a state that is legal. That is going to end up being the case for a lot of Americans here that remain in the holdout states right now. Right now, there are a number of states. They are on the minority now as far as states and medical recreation. Excuse me, medical legalization and or some form of recreational legalization. But um, yeah, it's the thing to do. Yesterday we had someone in the comments. I'm forgetting their handle right at the moment, but unfortunately, their family was in the state and they couldn't afford to move, so they were going to have to figure out what to do, how to do what they needed to do in a state where it still wasn't legal. And the unfortunate part about that is that you're running a risk, and you shouldn't have to be. That's it. You just shouldn't have to be running a risk. Hopefully, with federal decriminalization on some level, um, people will run either less of a risk on the state level, because it's still going to be state opt-in. It's still going to be all sorts of things, just like with alcohol, where you have different dry counties and you have votes that happen on a municipal level. So there's definitely going to be holdouts. But Mass Patriot, there's more places to move to now than don't have cannabis. So get out there, figure out the right environment, figure out who has the best medical laws, or the the best looking laws, whatnot. But as long as cannabis is there and you don't stand a chance of going to prison for growing some plants and or possessing cannabis, that's the move. Let's see. Standard in the Missouri, Illinois area up to $10 to $20 a gram. That's got to be at the retail level, $10 to $20 a gram. Legalization in Illinois did nothing to drop prices. Unfortunately, what we're experiencing within legalization is the addition of all these taxes, um, supply chains that are getting figured out in the early moments. Right now, it's when these states start up, you're seeing the ebb and flow of products coming from limited amounts of producers and that kind of thing, and that's really affecting the available quantity on markets and dispensary levels. So that's a supply and demand thing that you're experiencing there a lot of times. But in between, and in states like California right now, if the taxes weren't as they were, if we had Oregon taxes per se, if we had the same type of state taxes that Oregon did, our product, if you just minused out the California state taxes, would be 30 to 40% less. It is an absolute double up here in California. The taxes create 2 times the amount of cost behind each product. So I know for a fact it's not the brands eating up that profit. It's really in the cost of the structure. It's cost of doing things legally. It's the taxes, and that's driving the cost up from, let's call it on indoor, where it costs a certain amount of money to grow a pound, versus now you add on the cultivation taxes and do that kind of thing. You're adding somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 40%, depending upon how good of a grower you're dealing with. The lower the yields, the higher the taxes, right? So hey, thanks for that. Again, we've got quite a few people in the chat right now and watching. So if this is your first time, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps other people as we're going through this. Last couple of days, there's been people either reporting us or on this type of a talk. We've been actually getting restricted, so no one under 18 can talk about it. I thought you had to smoke weed or something on YouTube to have that happen, but either we're getting reported or I'm saying something against algorithm rules. We're going to figure out how we can be a little more discoverable here. But in between, likes, subscribes, and shares really help us out. So thanks for that up front. Steve Woods, off-duty police officers in New Jersey can smoke cannabis now with the new law. What's your thoughts on that? Actually, we spoke about that just a little bit earlier here. I think it's a great thing. It's just going to push the issue of how do you delineate or decipher when someone's high versus when someone just has cannabis in their system. Because as we were talking about before, the reason the DEA is going after testing products from a dispensary rather than Old Miss, doing all this kind of stuff, it's in the name of public safety. That along has to do with the people who provide public safety, right? Public safety officers, that kind of thing. There's no way that it's okay for them to be inebriated while on duty. So how is that department? How are those associations going to again decipher who was high when something happened while on the job? Um, I truthfully, again, think everyone should be able to enjoy cannabis, whether recreationally or enjoy the benefits of it medically, and that includes officers. But really, when it comes down to public safety and what they're trying to to do in the name of public safety, when it comes down to DUIs and let's even say public safety officers, it's like, well, how can you tell if someone was high on the job or not, or high while they were driving? I think that's the biggest issue, Steve. But thanks for the question. Little Mac 86, I've told my doctors I'm growing my medicine here in Ohio. I want them to know it's helped me. I'll be a martyr if I have to. Duh. The fact that you still have to worry about being a martyr is something that kills me. But it's not something that's unfamiliar to most people who were here prior to the last 5 years in California or any state there for over the last 10 years or prior to that, right? Is everyone kind of had to go through and make a choice as to what it is, and that's the horrible nature of it. It's personal well-being or personal safety, and that's just not an okay choice to be making if you have something that ails you on a daily basis. When it comes down to medicine, you shouldn't have to make that choice, and I'm sorry you're going through that, little Mac. Cliff Rock on Flowers, hey, thank you very much. Morak Senate, I got B times Pyro. Morak Senate, can you tell me when the Morak's going to the Senate, please? Unfortunately, we don't know when the MORE Act is going to hit the Senate, not yet. And when we announced earlier today in the headlines, the CAOA Act, which was supposed to be the continuance of the MORE Act into the Senate with bipartisan approval, has just that went from being announced here late this month, of which was promised by Schumer, to being delayed till hopefully right before the August break, is what he said there. So, not sure when that's going to hit the Senate, nor if it's likely to pass. We have plenty of people starting to put up new bills. You've got the one that we were talking about today as well, where it's a bipartisan bill that was presented by, let me get that back out there, bipartisan bill that was presented by Representatives David Joyce, Hakeem Jeffries, and Brian Mast. Joyce is Republican from Ohio. Hakeem Jeffries is a Democrat from New York, and Brian Mast is Republican from Florida. And what they have just presented was a Preparing Regulators Effectively for a Post-Prohibition Adult Use Regulated Environment Act, which they're dubbing the Prepare Act. So really what's happening is people are pushing the issue on a federal level, and that's what's going to be needed to figure out. Because in the end, this movement is going to pass with bipartisan support, right? We can't make it a partisan issue. They can't make it a partisan issue. But in the way of politics, in the way of red versus blue, in the way of getting things done, they like to one up each other. They want to be known for getting this thing done. They want to be known for ending the atrocity against humanity. And realistically, them pushing each other from opposite sides of the aisle is probably one of the fastest way things are going to get done, especially if situations like this with the MORE Act and reaching the Senate and doing that kind of stuff is going to be something where feet are getting dragged or the issue keeps getting pushed down the road, can gets kicked, so to speak. So yeah, that would be the closest thing I can give to my opinion is that I don't know. Really, the more bills that are passed, the more bipartisan bills that press the issue, the more ideas are going to be presented, and regardless of what bill passes, those bills are now going to include the bipartisan ideas from the other bills being presented. And I really think that essentially um, that's progress. That's progress. And that's what we can hope for. So, B Times Pro, thanks for thanks for the heads up. Um, let's see, here we go, Wicked. Thanks for everybody stopping in the comments. And you know what? I'm probably going to wrap it up for this morning buzz. We're again, as for everybody who's been around from the beginning, and for the people who this is the first time to the show, we're messing around with the formatting on the morning buzz. We're looking at doing a couple extra things, probably keeping a clean version of the morning buzz in the morning, and then continuing with this, question and answer and comments here later on in the day, probably roughly around the 7:30 time period. So I thank everybody for joining in for the next, let's call it for the next time being. We're going to keep here. I think I'm going to relinquish to the fact that I'm going to be starting at 7:30 with these things. I haven't made one 7 a.m. start time, so we're going to kind of go with the flow on this. It's tough for me to get here and then have everything picked out, because trying to pick the freshest stories of the morning, not pick anything from the night before. And so, yeah, that's what these mornings are about. And I thank everyone for participating. Thank you, everybody, for the likes and the comments and the shares. Please feel free to join us on the app. The conversation is beginning to extend that way a little bit there. We're building a community there of cannabis enthusiasts, and we have quite a few less restrictions there. And well, no restrictions. People are worried about cannabis friendliness in different apps. We're a cannabis platform. We're not only cannabis friendly, we're a cannabis platform, and that's how it goes. So everybody have a great Friday. I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in the weekly roll up, and have a great weekend. If not, and be well. Thanks for joining.